Hello, I'm Colin Green and this is Spike Pit. Have you ever asked yourself, how do I start a podcast? Well, I asked myself that question. I didn't really know that there was a demand that people would listen. I consumed a lot of podcasts. I'm a pretty enthusiastic board gamer, gone over into role-playing games much more recently, and that's a different story. But I was listening to a gentleman called Jason Hobbs, and he had a show called Hobbs and Friends of the OSR. And one day he launched a different podcast called Random Screed. And this was what is kind of referred to as an anchor podcast. Now, I don't see any true distinction between an anchor podcast or any other type of podcast. You've got some folk chatting into a microphone of some description and putting it out on the internet. Is that not a podcast? Okay, we could get funny about it, but as far as I'm concerned, you record yourself, you put it out there, you put some shows together, you do maybe like a video podcast, put it on YouTube, whatever. You like to talk. You're probably someone who likes to talk. What's not going to happen is you're not going to have a podcast if you don't record something and put it out there. I think anybody with a reasonably decent phone will get good sound quality if you just think a little bit about, one, where you're recording, the acoustics, the surrounding noise. And let me tell you, don't get hung up on that either, because a lot of people, they come here for the content. They've not come here for a massive polished product. You've got to be able to hear it. Don't want any super annoying distractions. It's a funny thing, podcasting. You get a connection with your audience with podcasting. I've met a bunch of people. Now I'm no great shakes. I'll Spike Pit, maybe 150 perhaps regular listeners. In terms of YouTube and stuff like that, this is nothing. But to me, regular Joe, 150 people listening to what I've got to say, it is pretty mind-blowing. I've had approaching 75,000 downloads. When I started out, I never dreamt of any of this. The podcast was like a journal, like a diary of an audio diary, if you like. So let me get back to this Random Screed. Talking about Anchor, and a whole community popped up around this Anchor. Now, Anchor is a little app. You can go on your platform of choice, download the Anchor software. But let me tell you, it can be a nightmare. It can be a right pain, especially on Android. I've got an Apple phone and it seems to work better on there. But it don't cost you nothing. You can record some content and Anchor will distribute it for you. Now, I don't get nothing for endorsing Anchor, and really I'm not exactly endorsing it. As you will find out, I've got some tips around this. But you can set your base as Anchor and upload episodes to it. Now, if you're in the States, you kind of will get some monetization with that podcast, but don't worry about that, because it pays back in different ways. it's a great way to engage, like I said, with the community, to meet people. You kind of make proper friends. Next thing you know, you're perhaps jumping on Discord. And if you do a gaming podcast, like I talk a lot about D&D, the groups that have sprung up from doing this podcasting, people that I never would have met across the whole world, I thoroughly recommend it. The more you do, if you, I think you've got to just try and respect people's time. Try and make the best recordings you can, but don't get hung up on it. The interesting thing, and I'll talk about community, the interesting thing about Anchor that you might not realise is there's this business of call-ins. And people in the podcasting community are in touch with each other like any other community. And there's information and conversations going on behind the scenes. There's people recording messages, sending them to other people, so we call this a call-in, and then that goes on to someone else's show. So you kind of, by grouping together, there's this cross fertilization of ideas. You hear about other podcasts on someone's show, other people hear about your podcast on their show. We know how this all works, but you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to overcome that idea that you don't like the sound of your voice. You feel like you're sat talking to yourself, and I do everything unscripted. You could make notes, but I wouldn't necessarily go for that big script. Don't go for that script. I think the harder you make it, the less likely you're actually then get there and do something. Perfection is the enemy of done. You can go back to your episodes, you can improve them, you can take them down, put them up, you can mess about with them to your heart's content. Not everybody's happy when you do that, but at the end of the day, you've got to be happy with your own product. You might want to invest in better recording equipment down the line. I said I was going to have a tip for you. There's a piece of software called Easy Recorder, and that's what I use on my phone. You can attach a mic to it if you want. If the mic on your phone's alright, it's fine. It's got some limited editing capabilities on it. If you get the paid version, I think it's a couple of dollars, couple of quid, and that's super handy. Nice quality, and you just take your files and you upload them to Anchor. And on Anchor, if people have called into you, you've got a desktop app that helps you organise your call-ins. But seriously, for so long, I did everything on my phone. It was a piece of cake. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I'd encourage you. It's great fun. If you've got any questions, fire them in the comments. If you want to talk about podcasting, I'm passionate about it. I like to think I've picked up a few tricks, and something that could be discussed in the comments, perhaps, I don't know. And there's also a load of other podcasters out there who listen to old Spike P, and I'm sure they'll weigh in on the conversation as well. So you could do a lot worse than taking a look at them comments. Maybe give us a like and subscribe if you want to sort of see this grow a bit and encourage me to put out a bit more content. I've got loads of ideas, so we'll see where it goes. Anyway, thanks for listening. Take care, and I'll catch you later. So this is the errata section of the show. You will come to love it, I'm sure. It will be an ongoing feature, I promise. And this time, my hot tip for this piece of software that I use so much, I screwed up the name. Yep, it's Easy Voice Recorder. Alright. The other thing you could do is you could also just get yourself a little digital recorder. I use a Sony one, and just just chat away into that. It's got a little USB thingy that you slide out, plug it into a computer, upload your files that way. Really nice. I'm going to be using that a bit more, safe fiddling about with a phone. But the thing about a phone is you've always, well, most of the time, or most people now in this day and age, they've always got their phone on them. It's never far away. Digital recorder might just be a little barrier to stop you actually getting out there and recording your podcast.